Hello and welcome. Today I'll be presenting an argument for the use of corporal punishment, otherwise known as spanking, in the home and the school, and why that with control and with the child's best interest in mind, corporal punishment is not child abuse. The first point that I'd like to cover is spanking's usefulness to a parent in child rearing. I was spanked when I was a child, and I would say that between 80 and 90% of parents in the United States have used spanking as a disciplinary method at least once. There's also another survey that reports that 80 to 90% of parents of 3-year-olds spank their child at least occasionally. There's a reason why these numbers are so high. It is because corporal punishment is a good tool for conveying the consequences of misbehavior in children. This does not mean that there should be the only method used for discipline, but similar to a well-balanced meal, we should also make sure that there are other disciplinary methods and techniques being used complementary of that. When used as a backup fashion, a child will know that spanking is not out of the question of consequences. Overall, the goal should be to reduce the need of spanking in the future. And if a child understands there's a consequence to their misbehavior, it teaches them a valuable life lesson of being responsible for their actions. There's no infliction of harm on a child when corporal punishment is conveyed in this manner, rather than long-term benefits, because it helps the child understand the consequences of disobedience. I feel that it's a good tool because I further would like to distance the two concepts. On one hand, you have child abuse, which is just a smacking or hitting. It's just we're not even trying to convey to the child what's going on. But now, parents should still use spanking if they can deem it necessary. But communication is what separates the two. So what you have to do is you address the area of behavior, and you let them know that your discipline is motivated by genuine concern for love and concern for the child. You got to articulate what the boundaries are, why they're there, and what happens when a boundary gets crossed. This gives a depth to things that's not there with just plain old child abuse. One of the main emotional ingredients that has to be in place is that there's no place for anger in the process. There are several steps that are essential in making sure that the child has his or her dignity intact. There's several things that must occur. First, the child must be in a private place away from his or her siblings. Second, the child must know in advance what they have failed to do or did do. Thirdly, the child must acknowledge that they have done these things, and then also, fourthly, you must remind them that the child is for their good, and you would make sure that they understand the consequences for their actions. And this will be an important sign to know that you're in control and that you're not in anger. You want to make sure you go through these steps to make sure that what you do is once you administer punishment, then that you are doing it in a place of love and not in a place of anger. Show you some visual aids I have right here of the scope of punishment. And this is in schools. So the situation I gave you was in a home, but there are several states. There's actually 31 of them, in fact, that allow it in the schools. I'll bring this up so you can see it. The European model is a little differently. You see right here that they're a little different. The blue is only in school that you see, and then your green is prohibited everywhere, and the red is allowed in these countries. But if I hold the two up here, And you can see that there's not much of a disparity. But I think a lot of the common problem with that is that a lot of people associate spanking and corporal punishment with child abuse without digging into the actual meaning and digging into the actual process that is behind proper discipline. Because a lot of people would like to throw it all in one basket when really there is a clear separation between the two. The other thing I would like to cover and make sure is that make sure that we understand here in this space is that there are a lot of researchers that have come against these proper methods and have still brought up issues or saying that maybe it doesn't do any good. So there's a study that was showing that a lot of researchers have not even tried to appropriate a lot of this. A lot of the detractors have not tried to actually give certain situations. So to me, I mean, this is like opposing all radiation treatment based on research that ignores the dosage and type of cancer we're treating. Case by case basis is very important here. Historians widely also assume that corporal punishment has is outdated, but I would convey that as a counter argument, as that this has been going on for a while, and that there are generations of scholars and doctors and soldiers that have been disciplined this way, and it has really made a lot of our the country of what we see today. A lot of successful people have had this disciplinary method being used upon them. So, in closing, when used intentionally, under control, with the proper process, corporal punishment is not child abuse. You have to make sure that you are expressing love for your child. You have to make sure that they understand what they're doing, that they understand the consequences, and that there's always that they know that the love is there, and that you're just correcting them to make sure that they have to spank less. I do appreciate your time today. Have a great rest of your day.